Hey, it's Monday. Joining us today, back again after almost a year.
Almost a year.
Almost
We're almost there.
is Darreon Nihiser back again.
Yes.
Great to have you.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me, guys. Again, I appreciate it. And again, I'm digging the shirts. Very festive for the season.
Talking on positivity today. Thought we'd bring the vibes, the positive vibes. So
All day, every day.
so I believe since the last time you were here, you've become a little more official in the mental health field. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Just got more field experience. I think the first time I came on, I was very green and very fresh, but I'm glad to come back with some refreshed eyes and new experience and ready to talk about new topics,
Yeah, and we've kind of gotten our act together over here as well.
Mhm.
We've lubed up the machine a little bit. So,
Mhm.
well, should we just get into it? Let's get into it. Let's get into it. So today we're talking about positivity problems. Which end of the spectrum should we start? Do you think?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. It depends. What do you think your audience is into? Do they like happy endings we could end, or do they like being left in the unknown? I guess it just kind of depends.
Well, I don't know. Let's go ahead and we'll start with the problems that people have with being positive.
Okay.
The a lot of people. I feel like I may have used this example a few weeks ago where my girlfriend had texted me and said something along the lines of like, you're my light, and then like immediately sent another text message being like, oh, that's so lame, or I feel so lame, or something like that immediately after. And it just got me thinking on, the fact that in society these days, I feel like, especially with meme culture and stuff like that, negativity is promoted so much. And anytime somebody shows sorts of positivity, it's like frowned upon. It's made to look lame or uncool. And it's like, why do we make that seem like the bad thing?
It's a really great question. And it's like such a big question. I mean, I ask myself that all the time, and it's really easy to answer like in my own like imagination, right? And to have all the answers, but like realistically, there's like so many. I don't know. There's so many factors that go into it. I think I think there's this culture around self-deprecation and just deprecation in general. And I think that really has like kind of like revolved around kind of like a general like societal trend, especially in the West, to like have humility, right? And not be arrogant and not be a certain type of way, not be fake or like too vulnerable, right? Or I guess acting vulnerable, right? There's a lot of things like going behind that. I People don't really give themselves enough credit, right? If someone makes you feel a certain way, like if I said to my girlfriend Priyanka, right? If I was like, "You're the light of my life," right? And that makes me feel a certain type of way that I haven't been used to expressing. Of course, I'm going to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me backpedal a little bit." And two, sometimes people get like a little anxious with that, and if they don't get met with a response right away, they'll just kind of take it back. I mean, there's so many different things that can kind of go behind it, right? So that's kind of like what comes to mind for me immediately, because I know I've done the same thing.
I mean, so the problems, with positivity. So, a lot of people think that positivity is just some people have it, some people don't. Some people, life just it ain't right. You can't be positive. I've been blessed to be able to have traveled the world, to be able to see other countries and see how other people got to live and whatnot. To give me a weird mindset, my opinion on like not being able to take for granted, just like how I just drove up here to be here at his house. I've got an energy drink. I've got a steady paying job and stuff like that. We don't live in a place that doesn't have that kind of stuff or doesn't have running water or anything like that. So it's hard to. I don't know where I was going with this now. What I'm trying to like get the point.
Sounds like you're feeling positive, Chef.
Well, no, the point of is like, you know, being positive is not just like, even though I've got all those experiences, like being able to wake up and still be positive is always going to be a fight, you know, day to day.
It's a choice.
And it is a choice, and it's going to be a fight. Like you've got to develop a certain way to go about life and to think about life in a different way than you've probably been thinking if you want to be, you know, extremely positive all the time.
Yeah, it's it's a difficult thing, I think. Positivity, at least what I know from my experience, I mean, it's like a lens, right? It's like a lens you can look at the world through, just like I mean, it's optimism, right? When I think of positivity, I think optimism. I think optimism, pessimism, nihilism, like all these things. And even with like those things, there's like intersections, right? Like with nihilism, it's the idea that like nothing has purpose, like life has no meaning, nothing has like inherent like value, right? But I think like there's a couple different lenses you could put on that. I think there's a pessimistic lens you could put on nihilism of just like nothing matters, so fuck it, right? Fuck all of this. I resign from life. I'm saying fuck you to everyone. No friends, no enriching like activities, no exercising, no this, no that, right? And I think if you're still residing with nihilism and you put like an optimistic lens on it, it's like, wow, life has no meaning. I can really actually do whatever I want, tell people how I feel, express myself. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because none of this matters, right? That's with optimism. I see it as a lens, and that's like reinforced by the fact that it's like driven by our mood. Like, what mood are we in, right? Of course, it's going to be like harder, like every morning to wake up and just be positive, right? That's so tough because it's like when you wake up, even just neurologically, like neurochemically, when you wake up, that's like your highest like natural rise in like cortisol, the stress hormone, right? And that's something that's just to help you wake up, right? For some people who maybe have some more chemical imbalances, or maybe they're just exhausted or whatever other reason, right? That might register for them as this day is going to suck, right? And then they're just automatically distanced from that positivity, maybe that optimism that they might experience for the rest of the day. They kind of like shut the door and like not really invited in as much as they would say if they were kind of like today might be long, today might be tough, and I'm gonna try, right? It really does depend. Optimism, positivity, it really can depend on what you're saying to yourself, right? Like you may be met with some emotions, you may be met with some challenges, but how are you going to respond to yourself? And how are you going to respond to the challenges, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if you and Priyanka ever got the chance to go see Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that movie, it was pretty much like the whole thing that it explored was what you were talking about with nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, the villain of the movie saw it in that pessimistic light of, you know, nothing matters in this universe, and had a very negative, you know, outlook on that, where, you know, by the end of it, the protagonist has taken on that nihilism in the positive way. And it's like, exactly, nothing matters. So, you know, we can do anything. We can, you know, and I thought that was a very cool exploration of all of that, using the multiverse and stuff like that to kind of explore that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, we talk about it tons on the show about perspective, and I mean, it's going to happen. You can't, you know, expect to be positive every single day of your life.
Yeah, and that's one problem with it. I think a lot of us fall into as well. I think there's like a dream of positivity. Like positivity for some people is just like a something to attain, right? It's like a dream. It's like a goal all the time, which isn't really realistic, right? I mean, again, positivity, it could look so many different ways. It could be a feeling, it could be some thoughts, it could be your memories, it could be a lot of different things. And I think whenever people really try to chase that and hustle for that positivity, it can really look like, I think there's like the term I think it's like toxic positivity. I'll just stick with toxic positivity for now, right? Where it's like we're so like married to that idea of being positive that we'll do anything to just like fit that narrative until we're exhausted, right? And then we're not feeling so positive for a while, right? So that can be like another big problem with it, you know. Oh, we got a message here. It looks like.
I think that goes along with kind of what you're saying here.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes people who are super positive mask a lot of their emotions. I mean,
Yes and no.
yeah,
It depends on the person, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that's wrong. You know, masking is like masking is kind of like that phenomenon where it's like for anyone who's not sure in your audience, it's just that whenever you are feeling something, you're conveying a completely different thing, right? If you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling fatigued, if you're feeling just disinterested, and you're putting on a smiling face and you're acting very cordial and you're acting very excited about everything, right? That's something it can look like if you're always trying to be positive and trying to like convey that message and trying to fake it till you make it with positivity, right? Yeah, I think yeah, that's a good point. You know.
I feel like this is a good pivot point to the other side of the spectrum
Mhm.
where, and I think Shep and I have both kind of talked about this before, because we're a couple of guys that we try to be positive,
Mhm.
most of the time. And I think that there is a problem that comes with being the positive person as well. That when people start to see you as that positive person, it's almost like you're not allowed to be negative.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're having a bad day, whoever you're with is almost like, well, you can't act like this because you're Mr. Positivity,
Right.
And I know you've kind of talked about that with your music a little bit,
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that point because I know we've been kind of keeping it as like the singular like person, but it definitely can have a lot to do with image. I mean, I know I've like experienced with that myself. Like the one day I'm not positive, people are asking like, "What's wrong?" Right? So it can be, and with that masking piece, that can be a part of that. Just keeping that image up, keeping that image up, so you can just keep intact that self esteem and that positivity and this whole identity that we're trying harder for than we really need to, right? That's a great point. Yeah, yeah. um
I was going to ask.
Another point to go with that, but go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You go.
Oh, okay. All right. I was going to ask. I mean, do you? I know my answer to this, but do you feel that there's a difference between positivity and happiness?
Oh man. I like that question. um I think there can be a difference. I think they can be two very different things because I think you can be feeling like shit and still be positive about things, about like the outcome. Because one thing with optimism, one thing with positivity that comes to mind is like being able to lean a little bit into hope that things are going to be okay at the end of the day, that you'll be okay at the end of the day, that something will work out, and even if it doesn't work out, there's going to be a point of acceptance there, of relief. Like positivity can be helpful and just like being like reassuring, right? I think with happiness, I think it's like such a broader like topic. I don't know. I want to hear y'all's thoughts on it as I'm kind of processing that question, you know.
I mean, I don't know. To me, because it just depends on your definition of each, like, and how what you were just kind of talking on. Like, because to me, like positivity isn't like waking up every day being like, "Damn, the fucking sun is shining. The birds are chirping. I love my life. I'm ready to go out and party. I'm gonna smile and talk to because
Mhm.
that's not how I feel every single day of my life. Positivity to me has always been like, I know no matter what like situation I'm in, as long as I'm going with my heart with love,
Mhm.
I'm going to be okay. No, in the end, and that to me is the positivity because then I can feel sadness and like we've always talked about like living and feeling in your emotions. I can do that knowing that tomorrow I might wake up feeling better. I might be relieved. And you know what I'm saying? So that is the having the positivity mindset. Whereas happiness to me is like I don't think you really know you're happy until you sit and self reflect on where you're at. But I think happiness to me is just being completely like content with
Mhm.
everything. Like I'm, like I have a job I enjoy enough to get me by. I'm doing, my music. Like for me personally, it's like I'm doing music, I'm filming, I've got my own place, my son's growing up, he's a good guy. Like I look around and I'm like, yeah, life is good. Like I can say I'm happy. Like I am happy. That to me is happiness, is being
Uh-huh.
just overall content
Uh-huh.
who you are. And like I feel like even in that reflection, like if you realize the spots of your life that you want to change, but you make a choice and you have goals and you have a plan, I think that you're still in that encompass of being happy and happiness there, because like you're doing something about it.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that point because it brings to mind of just like that point before that I personally believe in is like not pessimism, optimism and positivity as a scope, as a lens, as a point of view, and happiness as that energy, that feeling, that emotion, that mood, that essence. Like happiness is also something I think like people who mask and who are positive are trying to attain,
Mhm.
right? Through positivity,
Right.
right? So I guess I never really thought about those two kind of crisscrossing, but I think people who are happy, I think it might be easier for them to just be positive, right? And people who are probably unhappy, right? And I'm just making broad sweeps here, right? Might use positivity to try to get there, right?
Yeah.
But then again, it's kind of like a tool. It's just a tool. Like positivity, I think, is just a tool to like accomplish different tasks, right? In our lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's, whatever that lens is that you look through is going to inform your entire world. I forget what the saying is about reality being, basically your perception of what it is. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you're constantly looking through the lens of pessimism and negativity, everything's fucked all the time. Like, that's just how it is. If you believe it's not going to be okay, it's probably not going to be okay.
Yeah.
Whereas on the flip side of that, keeping that positivity, I definitely don't think that happiness and positivity are the same thing. I think the two things can go hand in hand. Like you
Hmm.
were saying earlier, people just kind of strive. You were saying earlier that people strive, to be positive all the time.
Hmm.
But I think people strive to be happy all the time. That's what they're striving for. Yeah,
Hmm.
they definitely do use positivity to do that.
For sure. Yeah.
Because I know for me, yeah, there's that optimism.
Hmm.
Uh, but because I don't know, you also said, I think you said people who are happy have an easier time being positive.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think it might also be the other way around. I didn't want to say one or the other. I think it's both. They kind of feed into each other
Yeah.
because
For
I
sure.
know
They really can. Hmm.
for me to be happy because I have a positive outlook.
Yeah.
So even in those bad times, even when negative things are happening to me, I can think of it in a positive light. I can think of it as something that is necessary, even though it might be a negative situation.
Uh-huh.
I can accept the negativity
Hmm.
because of the positivity, leading to the content and happiness.
Yeah, yeah. I think and this interesting thing about it, right, is like I think both are true. And both I think positivity and happiness are not mutually exclusive, but definitely are like kind of like different things and both pursued by people. It's interesting that with my experience in therapy, there are a lot of people who they want happiness, but they are prioritizing very other things, and they aren't sure that they quite want happiness, but they want other things. It's like with some people, you have to dig super deep for them to say, "I want to be happy." Right? For some people, they might say, "I just want my issues to be over. I want peace of mind," right? Which is a chunk of that happiness,
Mhm.
right? It's the contentedness that we were just talking about, right? Some people legitimately want, to live in chaos. Some people, really love like not love, but some people are really used to like chaos in their life, and people are very much used to pessimism as a way of like staying sane, as a way of explaining the world. And people do that with positivity as well. And it's not like any of that stuff is bad. And it's not like anyone should feel shamed or guilty for that. Again, it's like that's why we're talking about it like lenses and scopes, right, is because these are just mechanisms we use,
Right.
right? And at the end of the day, we can see how they affect us, whether it be pessimism or optimism, positivity, negativity, you know.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's like one of those things where I keep thinking this whole time we've been talking, like, that I want to say that people should be positive, like that should be their primary mindset.
Mhm.
Um, but I also don't want to tell people like you have to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just know for me, from personal experience, that a lot of the things that were bringing me unhappiness in my life and
Mhm.
making me miserable, I had to take a step back and think about these things and realize that it was the way I was looking at a lot of these situations. I was looking at them in negative lights. And once I was able to look at them in a more positive way, I was able to work past these problems and make a better life for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why like we talk about so often how like just thoughtfulness is important, right? Because before you know it, like you could get caught up with whatever moods you might be in for one reason or another, and that's your lens if you're not careful, and that can be your lens for a long time, right? And for some people it might take like recognizing that, like just being objective with yourself and being curious with what you're experiencing internally, right? We all have like that sixth sense of what's called mindfulness, right? And you can use that to explore your lenses and how you view the world, right? It's pretty great. Yeah.
Um, Jumping back to the
Mhm,
problems that positive people have,
mhm.
just what are the thoughts in general of being the positive person that you feel like you can't be negative. You can't have a bad day. I know for me, one of the first times I ever experienced that was probably sixth, seventh grade for me, because I was always like the funny guy. Like I always wanted to just make people laugh. I always wanted to bring that positivity into any room I was in, even as a child. Um, but then I started to feel like people didn't take me seriously
Mhm,
because I was always, trying to be the funny guy.
mhm.
But it's like I also have this other side. I also have my more serious side, and that's how I feel nowadays, where I try to be Mr. Positivity. I try to bring that light anywhere I go. But
Mhm.
then if I'm having a bad day, sometimes some of the people around me make me feel like I can't have a bad day.
Yeah. I think that goes back to that image piece we were just talking about of when you so often come in and you're funny and you because I have the same issue. I've always had this issue, right? Maybe not always. There have been breaks in my life because let's be honest, the more positive you try to be and the more welcoming you try to make your spaces and more fun, right? That's a lot of energy you're consuming for yourself, right? I was trying to think of where I was going, but I mean, I have a lot of experience with that too. It's first off, when you are building up that image of being a person who wants to have fun and be funny and be loving and caring like all the time, people they're solidifying their view of you. And a lot of people, right, again, with different lenses, maybe some people have that more realism or more pessimism kind of like lens, right? And that for people who aren't watching this, I'm saying those in air quotes, right? Um, and they see that and they go, what does that person have that I don't have? Right? Or they must be lying, or why do they deserve this when I feel this way, or whatever else, right? I think it's something that's very much like the part of the American dream to be like that, but in the real world, in real world settings, it can be construed as like a bad thing, like something's wrong with you almost, or if you're someone who's like if you are like someone who's a caretaker or a people pleaser, people might find that out and might be like, why are you like that, right? They might kind of sniff that out. Or if you do like legit, you want to have fun and be funny and take up your spaces in a fun and comfortable and loving way, people might get offended by that. It's a very strange thing, you know. But it goes back to that image thing. We build that image for ourselves, and then when we're not that, it can be easy for some people to wonder what's wrong, or some people to say there is something wrong, right? Or for some people to actually start poking now because they went, aha, I knew you were not perfect. I knew you weren't perfect. So now let me dig in deeper, or now let me call it out, or now let me whatever else. Right. So that can definitely be a thing. I know I've experienced and I've seen in my therapy spaces.
No, I'm fine with that a lot. I always like to look at people like, I don't know, as a musician, I always felt like there's a reason why musicians always um, use like weather metaphors when it comes to emotions and stuff. Like people are just like the weather, you know. If I was sunny every single day, just like if it was outside every single day, no cloud in the sky, just sunshine, pure sunshine every day, do you think, you know, things would grow or shit would, you know, nah, you couldn't live there if it was just like that. You know, there's got to be cloudy days. You know, sometimes some storm's gonna pop up. Sometimes I'll, you know, drink me some whiskey and a fucking tornado's gonna roll through here. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, when you start looking at people like that, you can start understanding. You know, people can go through their periods of darkness. They can be positive. They can hit the lows and all that stuff. But I do find truth in what you say. I do think as a society we do, you know, maybe if you see someone positive and you're like, damn, I wish I had that, and you do wait for that one moment of weakness that person has, so you can blow that up to say, see, they're, you know, oh, there it is. There's that negativity. I knew they weren't positive. They're just faking it. There's just
Yeah.
like on the internet, we're all faking it.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, I know I've been in those situations on the other end where I will have been just like walking somewhere, maybe listening to some music, and I'm just like stuck in like this cycle of just like thoughts about something because I just had a bad interaction with somebody or had an argument or conflict or like I embarrassed myself or something or just something weird or like negative, quote, negative happened. And I'll just be like spinning on that shit, just walking down the street. Right. And I'll go into a shop and I'll see someone just being so like nice and so like friendly to like the cashier or something. I'll be like, oh, this guy's like being a douchebag. He's gonna take up this whole cashier's time, and I'm just trying to get my thing. I just want to order my tea and just get out of here. Like, fuck this dude, this fake guy. Like, I know I've gotten into that before too. Sometimes it's not necessarily that people like are thinking about you in a certain way and reacting exactly to like your life and what you're putting out there. They are reacting to what you're putting out there, but like from their own like ego sphere of what they're experiencing like in that moment. Right. I think that depending on what the positivity is and what it looks like and what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself, right? It can come off as just a shock. Sometimes it could just be different in certain people's environments. And they go, hey, there's a thing. Like, why is this thing here? You know, I think there's just so many different like motivations behind it, so many reasons why, but it's easy for me to say this person is like envious of you, or this person thinks you're fake, or this person thinks this or that. But people aren't often thinking about us as much as they're thinking about themselves in situations, right? So it could be that as well. But yeah, I agree with that point, Shep. Yeah. Huh.
Don't look at me, bud. I'm over here pondering.
Over here pondering. What are you pondering on, man?
I'm just pondering everything we're talking about right now.
It's such a big topic because there's like even with each of the questions that you just asked me, like even with the question of like what is the difference, like is there a difference and what differences are there between happiness and positivity? That's such a big question. That's such a big question.
I always think of to be able to know there's a difference is because you can have toxic positivity.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of toxic happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like happiness is just happiness. Like it's just that is the, you know, there's nobody that's like, man, because I can't even give you an example of what could be toxic happiness. I don't even know. Like I slapped somebody with $1 million.
Anything I could think of would just kind of be toxic positivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like that to me shows that there is a difference in them, but it's not like we were saying, it's not, you know, I always felt like the positivity was the vehicle in which I'm going to get to happiness.
Yeah, I think that's basically like the theme we've been going along. I think it's so true. And I think even to like that point that you were talking about is that like happiness, like even just like the very definition, the feeling, the whatever, it's authentic. I don't think for that reason you can like say there's toxic, positive. Everyone knows what like happiness feels like or has felt like or what it is. Like we all innately know it's such a human, it's such a animal thing. It's such a living thing. It's such a being. Like happiness is like a thing that all beings I feel like can experience, even though there's no truth, right? Or not truth, but evidence to say that all beings experience that. But
I
yeah,
definitely positivity is something that you use, and happiness is something that you feel.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Oh goodness.
oh,
Give me 1 second, folks. Oh Jesus.
So the fire alarm's going off.
Craig burned something.
I don't think I muted myself.
We got you.
Yeah.
We got the alarms going off because this is one hot episode of Chase and Chef that you guys are getting this Monday right here.
That's
But,
what it is.
No, I mean, it's been a good one to talking about, positivity and happiness and the differences in between the two. We got, I don't know, man. Like, I want to, eventually when the alarms and we all cool down over here, I want to get into how we could do toxic positivity, like examples.
Okay, so this is what's happening right now, right? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hold on 1 second. Thanks for muting me. Bianca's making a pizza and it burned. So that's what's going on right now. I don't remember where we kind of left off.
What were you just
Oh, you're good. You're good. I mean, it's always good to test the fire alarms, ladies and gentlemen. Now that we're getting into the summer season,
Yeah.
so when you're doing your spring cleaning out the house, test the fire alarms, get the batteries changed if you need to.
Yes. And you know what, Shep? There you are, like going in with the positivity. That's an example, folks. For anyone curious about what it can look like in real time. There we go.
It is that. Well, I'm an entertainer. I'm the showman. I understand that there's no such thing as dead air. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
we'll keep rolling over here. But no, I was saying to give it'd be cool to give some examples of what toxic positivity can look like.
Yeah. Oh, some examples. Do y'all have any examples? Love to talk about some.
I mean, there's to me, toxic positivity is just like you're ignoring real life problems and saying no, like everything was I used to do that a lot. Oh no, it'll all just work itself out. It'll all just work itself out. We'll be fine. It's good. Everything's fine. It'll all go out how it should. And you kind of get into a spot in life where you don't go nowhere. You're just in the middle, just floating. You know what I'm saying? Doing your thing.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's the toxic positivity. It's stunting you from questioning where you are, questioning certain things, and realizing like, oh no, I could change that. I could do better there. We could do different there.
Yeah. I think you illustrated that really well because it's like whenever it's like you're maybe not cleaning, but just like marrying to like that positivity, and you're just like so interlaced with it, right? It's like you're like putting everything else on the back burner that people would consider negative but important, right? Your daily like frustrations, your anger with people or with situations, like your stress. If we're always trying to be positive and that toxic positivity, I guess it's like you're not gonna do yourself any favors because you're already blocking off certain things that you should be feeling or processing, right? Which is going to bleed into other parts of your life. It's going to bleed into some of those happy emotions too, I feel like, right? I know like working with like certain folks who are working with their mood or their anxiety or their depression, they've masked for so long, they've people pleased for so long that they're not quite sure what they feel in a moment, right? They're not quite sure how to bring in and invite joy into their lives. They're not quite sure how to experience anger in like a healthy way. And I have experience with that too, right? I have experience with being a people pleaser and also like being maybe more passive, and you're not doing yourself favors, but you're also not doing the people around you favors, right? Because it's important for the people that you love and are close to know how you're doing. And if you're doing shit, but you're always putting on that positive face and saying those positive things, no one's gonna know until the pot boils over
Mhm.
and nothing happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah, and I believe we've probably all seen examples of that over the course of our lives and stuff, where people act a certain way, and everybody's like, I don't know, they've always seemed really happy to me every time I see them. You know, it's you do get stuck in that because yeah, people want you to be happy. You know, and takes a bit of vulnerability to be able to walk out and be like, hey, you know, I'm just not feeling it today.
Yeah.
You know, maybe tomorrow I'll be good. But to me, I also think that we've got to see the toxic positivity kind of bleed over into the culture of like good vibes only, or like
Yeah,
when you're having some good, you know, like a new relationship, and it's like the first bad thing pops up, or you're doing something because hey, I'm rolling with the good vibes and the positivity in my life and what I want to do when I want to do it, and that creates a negative emotion for somebody else, and you just don't want to deal with it because nope, I'm just dealing with good vibrations only. Take your negative vibes out of here. Like there's that also is creating this, you know, the toxic positivity cycle there of being like, well, yeah, you're being positive, but you're not, you know, like to me, that's like again, that's you're being positive, but you're not being happy.
Right. Or even being positive and not being honest.
Oh yeah,
You know, with yourself or others, because you can either like I feel like to both of your points, you know, you can be pushing your own issues to the side to be positive, and then it boils over at a certain point because you weren't being honest with the way you felt. You were just trying to maintain that mask of positivity. But that can also apply to other people as well. Like if somebody else is down on themselves, and you're trying to be positive to them and just be and pushing their realities aside too, and just pushing that positivity on them. You know, I think there should definitely be that communication of like, no, here's the reality of the situation, and here's how you can look at it through a positive lens, rather than just telling them, no, god damn it, be positive and that's it. Like, don't worry about anything else, just good vibes only, sort of thing. For sure. I know, you know, you said like with relationships and with you with the pot boiling over. Uh, my girlfriend and I now, you know, our relationship has been vastly different than any other relationship I've been in before. I truly believe that a large part of that has to do with the approach I took to getting into this relationship, because all these other relationships I've been in, I did exactly that. I kept the positive, and I didn't want to upset anybody. I didn't want to talk about, you know, the bad things, because you know, we're trying to get to know each other. We're trying to, you know, we're supposed to be in love and have this nice relationship and be happy and all this stuff. So we're not talking about all of these issues that are now building up. And we get into the relationship just fine, and then a little down the line, now there's all these problems, but these problems have been there the whole time. We've just never talked about them. And now they're all blowing up, and then the relationship ultimately fails. Whereas with this relationship, you know, we had a rocky start for sure. I mean, it definitely was a lot of having to have like conversations about, I don't know if I really like this, and you know, just having all these conversations that I never had in previous relationships up front. And you know, that's not to say we're perfect all the time. That's, you know, we still argue and stuff like that, but we handle it better. And we know all of these things about each other because we did it up front. We were honest with each other instead of just being blinded by positivity and love and trying to people please with one another. And I think that made a big difference.
That's a great point. And there are two things in there I wanted to talk about. Next time I come in here, when I'm like when I'm actually licensed and y'all have like 20,000 followers, I'm gonna bring in notes. All right, I'm gonna bring in a notepad to write on. But you had mentioned about arguing with your partner. I think when positivity can get like sketchy is when you're so worried about being positive that you don't want to argue, that you don't want to have conflict. You want everything to stay chill and copacetic. And I think that's another example of when positivity can go bad, because it's like conflict and arguing is important, right? I think that's a big part of like loving and successful relationships, is being able to express those feelings, those maybe resentments, those guilty times, embarrassed times, angry times. But when you're so fused to that narrative of positivity, everything's got to be positive, right? You're not going to be as inclined to like bring out the ugly feelings or what we would consider ugly. I don't want to judge those feelings as ugly, but a lot of people would, right? Again, the anger and anxiousness and sadness and things that are important to share with people that you're close to, and important especially to share with yourself and be vulnerable with yourself and be open with yourself with that stuff, right? It's it's yeah, and you also had mentioned a point about honesty and positivity, and it's so great when you can have both at the same time, when you can be honest and be positive, right? And at the same time, I think people feel like they have to choose one or the other, but you don't have to. You can incorporate both together.
Yeah, I've often said that confrontation does not have to be a negative thing, and
Hmm.
interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just nobody wants to be uncomfortable, right? Nobody wants to. As soon as they think about having to confront somebody or be honest or have that conversation with a loved one,
Hmm.
they're just thinking about how uncomfortable things can get and how we might be in a negative space for a little bit. But it's been my experience that the people I don't communicate with, the people who don't communicate with me, that negativity, that level of discomfort only gets worse over time. Whereas we can have a few moments of discomfort talking about this right now,
Hmm.
and it'll pass. And we've gotten to the root of it because we had an uncomfortable conversation and figured out how to move on, as opposed to the people who just let it wash over in the hopes of maintaining the positivity and the good vibes.
I wish there was more of that message being spread in schools, because there's definitely I think this might I'm just like completely talking out of my ass right now. It's just like I feel like the trend for people to not get more in touch with their emotions and their uncomfortableness very much has to do with religion and religious institutions, and that anything bad that's internal is bad, right? Anything that makes you uncomfortable internal should be bad, and if you feel guilty you did something bad, right? That's not always the case, though. Guilt comes up for different reasons. I
Right.
think, and I know that it's starting to be implemented a little bit more in like higher end, more wealthier areas where schools are, like in those schools and them in those school districts. That there's more like kind of like mindfulness tutors or something, or they have more education for kids around like therapy topics and stuff. I'm not exactly sure. I need to do more research, but take it with a grain of salt. I just wish that, and I hope we get to a point that we have more conversations in schools when kids are super young and they're formative. Because when you grow up in a lot of those environments where, anything uncomfortable is bad, you're never doing yourself any favors. You're holding yourself back from your own growth, right? And that's when like that dream of positivity, when that comes in for some people, can be such a tempting catch,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're not expected to experience guilt in a healthy way, experience shame in a healthy way, experience anger in a healthy way, nervousness in a healthy way, that's the other alternative that people see, right? And there seems to like always, not always, I'm generalizing, but there seems to often be this fork in the road people feel like they have to take, right? But you don't have to immediately take that fork. You can even just like go back and like go over the road again and see if you missed anything, another trail or something, right? I, I just hope there comes a point where we can have more open conversations about that, like just emotional connectedness and connectedness with your thoughts, right? And just connectedness with yourself as a whole. Right? It's super important, and I think we definitely do have a lot of distractions to keep us from that work, but it's so important.
Yeah. You had started that out by kind of saying that religion plays a factor in that, and I find that interesting because a lot of what got me more on a positive track with my mindset and everything was getting more in tune with my spirituality and everything, getting into Buddhism and Taoism and everything. Um, but even though that really cultivated a lot of positivity in me, I
Mhm.
had to write myself a note
Mhm.
in my little notebook I keep. The note says, "Beware of Buddhism." And it's because I realized that I would find myself slipping into a negative space
Mhm.
because I'm trying so hard to meet these constructs set by the religion, not the
Yeah,
spiritual part.
exactly. Yeah.
And I started feeling bad about myself because I'm like, damn, I can't live up to this. I'm not being positive. I'm not being good to people in the way that I should be, and I was not allowing myself room for error because I was trying to meet these religious standards.
That's like that's such a good point to bring up. Because I was hoping I was not coming off as that spirituality is the problem. I think spirituality is something that can be extremely helpful. It's something that I've been interested in looking more into for myself. Right. When I was younger, when we weren't being positive, we were being bad and ungrateful. Yeah. So kind of like that, right? It's like someone decided at some point in our history to go, if it's not good, it's bad. If it's not bad, it's good. It's like, where's the in between? Can we have like some like comprehensive? But anyway, it's like spirituality. I feel like is something that it's a beautiful thing. I think it's something that's so private to an individual. I think religion, and it's a great point that you phrased it like that, because religion and that institution full of those people, when they put the expectation on you to be a certain type of positive person, that's really troubling too, right? Expectations are issues for a lot of people. Sometimes we get expectations from those religious communities. Sometimes we pick them up kind of just like in our upbringing from our peers or our family or society or whatever else. I think that's definitely something that plays a part in people chasing that. Is it's not just something people feel like they have to do just to do, but also to fulfill an expectation of being a good person means thinking like this and doing these things that a positive person would do, right? People then go walk around and they have their hands over their eyes and ears, and they marry to that idea of should. I should be this way and I shouldn't be that way. And I think it's from some department in my the site that I work at, they talk about it as just be careful not to should all over yourself, because you're going to do that if you keep clinging to expectations and chasing instead of being, right? Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah,
Back over to me, huh?
but
I think I don't know. I'm thinking about the different intersections we've been talking about so far. And it's like the whole point about spirituality in religion and being and having expectations is interesting with positivity, because it where I see toxic positivity, so glad we brought this up. Where I see a lot of toxic positivity is in those expectations. I kind of missed that point during our intro and our conversation, but where you see a lot of that toxicity is those expectations. People hold them for themselves. People have held them their entire life, and that's where they can really like come in strong and where they're really apparent, right? Because without expectations, well, expectations aren't bad. First off, it's great to have high expectations for yourself, but sometimes people hold on to really high or really unrealistic expectations where that toxic positivity can come in, you know.
I mean, hell, we've experienced that just doing the Chase and Shep show. I mean,
Mm,
we talked about that a cajillion times on the show about how every like 3 to 4 months we have to take like a step back and reassess because
yeah.
we might find ourselves a little unhappy with things, and it's usually because we've set such high expectations for ourselves
Yeah.
that we have to remind ourselves that we're allowed to change those expectations. Nobody is holding us to that. We're not
Yeah.
contractually obligated to meet these expectations.
Yeah.
It's something that we would like, you know.
Yeah, it's such a wild phenomenon, because it's like, where do these expectations even come from that we're holding? I think even when I think about some aspects in my life, my expectations and the things that I've really clung to have come from like the people I've been around that I see have been in the field for like 30 years. And I try to do everything that they do every day, right? And all the time. But that's not as realistic because this person is practiced and they have that kind of therapeutic stamina, or they have that kind of knowledge I just don't have yet,
Right.
right? It's wild. And I think too, I've had the experience of kind of I practice jujitsu, and I would watch a lot of videos of people talking about different tips and tricks and things to try, and I try to fulfill my own expectation of what I wanted to be like, and it was like them. I wanted to do the exact same exercises they were doing and the exact amount of sparring they were doing and stuff, but that wasn't realistic for me because I think that was like I was like burning out like 5 months into it because I tried to go every single day and I tried to do this right and that right and calorie count and do all this stuff, but it's not always helpful because when it comes down to expectations and people putting expectations onto you, maybe it's really easy for them to do that because they don't have to live that out and they don't have to sit with that drainage, that fatigue of trying to do that, right? And it's something to be really careful of. Again, I don't think expectations are bad. I just think
It should be reasonable.
it should be reasonable. We should hold those expectations lightly, right?
Yeah, even when, as I went through my own process of kind of dealing with my own mental health and cultivating positivity in myself and everything, going on my own like spiritual journey and all that. Nowadays, whenever I give advice to somebody, I always make sure to tack on, like that it's not as easy as I'm trying to make it sound. And I understand that like the way it's coming out of my mouth is making it sound like, oh, it should just be natural. You should just be able to do this. But it's just advice, and that I know that I've been doing this for years to get to where I'm at. And so, when I'm giving this advice, I make the point to tell them you're at the start of your journey.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to just overnight have this mindset all of a sudden.
Uh-huh.
That,
Yeah.
it does take work.
It's like a marathon. It's not a sprint. The quicker you are and the more desperate you are, you're going to keep grasping at straws with so many things around the things that you want. There's a balance to everything, I think, in life. And even with whether it's your perspective or your approach, how you carry yourself, how you go throughout the day, there's got to be balance. And it'd be helpful for us to remind ourselves of like, it's great that I'm positive. It's great that I have goals and expectations and all these things. And it's also great to not have those things. Almost not saying I should get rid of everything in my life.
To have the opposite as well.
It's okay to have the opposite. It's okay to have whatever you have and don't have whatever you don't have, right? As long as you can like remind yourself of that, and also just practice like being with yourself and experiencing life and just taking things in, right? Even in this conversation, we've had a couple moments where we've had to just take things in, right? Just because there's just so much to life. There's so much complexity, even just to the topic of optimism and positivity, right? I think just because we're humans, we're naturally inclined to simplify stuff. We're naturally inclined to categorize and just make a simple path. So we have this so that we just spend less mental energy or physical energy or whatever. And with positivity, it can be a marathon in practicing it and implementing it and building up the stamina for it, right? It's going to be a lot to try to take all in one bite, I think.
There's a lot to it. There's tons. There's even a lot we haven't talked about. I mean, there was a while ago I had thought to say, there's also a positive mindset of always saying yes to people and always trying to help everywhere you can help and doing everything you can, and that being a way of positive and to create and spread positivity. But you always got to keep in mind a healthy boundary is also a very positive way to live life too. You got to create healthy boundaries to live a healthy, positive life. Because like you don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to dry yourself out. If you treat yourself like weather, can't have every day be sunny. You got to take a cloudy day every now and then. Which is my
And I think there are some people out. I've like run into like a handful of people in my life who they put on that happy face every day, and it's hard to tell if it's real or not. But you feel it, right? You feel the positivity. You feel that this person is like also content with themselves and very confident and trusting in themselves, right? But at the same time, if you are a very positive person, you could be a peach, but not everyone likes the peach flavor. Not everyone likes the taste of a peach. There's always going to be people out there who aren't going to take well to that, which goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? And yeah, there are those yes people out there. I've been a yes person, and I'm still working my way out of that, right? Because it's like kind of mentioning before how we don't do any favors for ourselves. It's not really acknowledging like our value or our worth if we're just always saying yes to everything, especially tending to other people before ourselves very often, right? Or taking the opportunities that we might intellectually know are not going to be helpful for us or fruitful for us, but maybe we take them anyway because we feel like, again, we should. Again, I'm not saying calculated risks or risks are bad, but if we see that pattern in ourselves, right, we can see how harmful it can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of you was just talking about. I think it was you talking about doing things for other people, and how that can become a negative positive thing, where it's like you think you're doing the right thing by giving to this person and trying to take care of this person or whatever. But sometimes you're hurting yourself and you're holding that person back from their growth by doing all of that.
Yeah, and people get really mad about that sometimes too, right? Because I know I've made this distinction before, and this might literally just be semantics, but I think there's a difference between being nice and being kind, right? Like you can be really nice to someone and tell them all the things they want to hear, give them treat, spoil them, right? Maybe just arbitrarily, right? And I think there's also being kind, right? When I think of being nice, my own like kind of like biases with that word nice is like a transactional kind of thing. I'm being nice to you so you can give me validation. I'm being nice to you so you can give me friendship. I'm being nice to you so you can give me love and attention. I'm being nice to you so you can give me money or sex or promotion or whatever else, right? And then I think about that way, and I also think about it as like kindness as like that inner generosity expressed outward or internally back to yourself, right? That maybe stemming from that feeling of happiness or contentedness, or coming from maybe those positive narratives that we keep telling ourselves or that we act on or whatever else. I think kindness is less transactional and more of something that can be unconditional, and something that when we live out that kindness as opposed to that niceness, that we feel better about afterward too, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I think that.
I vibe with that hard.
Well, I think we're coming to a close here, so I think it's about time for some final thoughts. Who'd like to go first?
I could go first. Well, for one, again, I really appreciate y'all having me on. I think this is a topic I'll still be thinking about after this interaction. It's not often that we again have these conversations in our like friend circles or with like family members, especially at Thanksgiving when Uncle Joe wants to talk about like Biden's administration, right? It's something I think is important to talk about because it leads to so many other important conversations. And again, like if any of your audience is listening, practice like viewing your relationship with positivity, like view your relationship with your happiness, right? Like, are you someone who wants to be positive, and what does that even mean for you, right? I think we've been talking about positivity in a very broad sense, but it's really important to see what that can look like in your life and personalize it for you and like use your style with it, right?
I vibe with that. I think my closing thoughts today would be that if you learn yourself and you learn to love yourself, you will radiate positivity, which will be your vehicle to happiness. It's a long path, and it's a fight every day. And some days it's not linear. You know what I'm saying? And it's some days are better than others. Some days are just pretty chill. And like that could have been a forgotten day. Oh well.
Yeah.
But you'll get there.
Going off of that, it's just about balance. I try to, just like Thanos was right. It's all about balance. like myself, I try to stick to the positive, but I accept that it's not always going to be that way. Sometimes things are.
It's okay to be negative.
Yeah, it's okay to be
negative sometimes, but don't stay there.
Yes.
Same thing with positivity. It's okay to be positive, but don't stay there too long, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, it's all about the balance of it all. Positivity is a tool, and use that in those times of darkness to help you get out of there without getting sucked into it. But yeah, I think another fantastic episode. We're killing it with the guests this May. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I'm really digging the conversations we've been having this month so far.
Yeah.
And even kind of what we were talking about earlier, I feel like we could probably touch on again to plug a different podcast altogether. Next week we're having our buddy John on the show again, and he was actually just a guest on another podcast called Brunch with Pals, where he was discussing his background. He identifies as a Satanist now, but grew up in Jehovah's Witness, which he considers to be a cult, and talking a lot about the expectations and the negativity from that experience and everything. So yeah, I'd recommend going to check that out. I listened to a bit of it today myself, and it was a very opening conversation. I've been waiting to hear about that part of John's life forever, so I was very excited to listen to that, because he always breezes past it most of the time. He's like,
I want to talk to a Satanist. I want to talk to someone who's in that form of spirituality. That sounds interesting. That's cool.
So yeah, he'll be back on next week. Darreon, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, man.
Great
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you. And say hello to Priyanka and have fun going out for pizza tonight.
You can see your hand over there. All right. See you, fellas.
Peace.
Peace out.